They always say first impressions matter, but nobody tells you what to do when one won't leave your head. I was already running late. Traffic, wrong turns, a coffee spill on my shirt, the usual mess of a day that won't start right. When I finally pulled up to her house, I expected irritation, maybe a complaint. Instead, she opened the door like she'd been expecting a storm but wasn't afraid of it. "The plumber," I said, lifting the toolbox as proof. Her smile was small, measured. "You're late." I apologized, but she just stepped aside. "Then you better start in the bedroom. That's where the worst leak is." It could have sounded playful if her tone wasn't so even, so sure. The words hung there, heavy but not inappropriate, just precise. Like she knew exactly what she was saying and what it might sound like, but didn't mind either way. The house was quiet, too quiet. Not the kind that feels empty, but the kind that feels curated. Everything in place. Books stacked in deliberate disorder, framed black and white photos. A faint scent of something woody in the air. No mess, no chaos. Just calm. I followed her down the hallway, feeling like an intruder in someone else's story. Her footsteps were slow but certain, and I couldn't help noticing the details. The way her hair brushed against her collar, the silver ring she wore on her thumb, the light catching faint lines near her eyes. "This one," she said, pointing to a small valve near the radiator by the window. "It's been dripping for days." I knelt down, setting my tools beside me. "I'll take care of it." "I'm sure you will," she murmured, almost to herself. It wasn't flirtation, not exactly. More like a quiet test, the kind older people use when they've learned how to read others without asking questions. For the next few minutes, all you could hear was the faint hiss of the radiator and the soft sound of her moving about behind me. She didn't hover, didn't explain, didn't fill the silence. That alone was rare. Most clients made small talk, nervous or curious. But she just was. Present. Grounded. When I turned slightly to reach for a wrench, I caught her looking, not in a way that made me uncomfortable, but like she was taking inventory of who I was, beyond the uniform. Our eyes met for barely a second, but something passed. A flicker of recognition, or maybe curiosity. "You live around here?" she asked finally, her voice quiet, like she was testing the stillness. "Couple streets over," I said. "Just started taking private calls. Trying to build a list of clients." "That's good," she said, nodding slightly. People forget how important it is to fix small things before they become bigger. I don't know if she meant the leak or something else. When I finished, I told her the valve would hold now, but it might need replacing soon. She crouched beside me to look, close enough that I could see a faint freckle near her jaw. She smelled faintly of orange peel and clean linen. "Looks good," she said, her voice softer now. "You've got steady hands." That line shouldn't have meant anything, but the way she said it made it sound like more. Like something underneath, it wasn't being said aloud. I stood, collecting my tools, trying not to think too much of it. She walked me back to the door, sunlight spilling across the hallway, and for a moment neither of us moved. "Thank you," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "For coming even though you were late." Her tone wasn't sarcastic. If anything, it was forgiving, almost kind. On my way home, I kept replaying that single sentence she'd said at the start. Not the words themselves, but how calmly she'd said them, how easily they'd rearranged the air between us. "Fix my pipes in the bedroom first." She knew exactly what she was doing when she said it. And I'm not sure I'll ever forget how it sounded, but a week later, she called. Said the leak had returned. Not urgent, just annoying. Her voice over the phone was calm, polite, but something in the pauses made it sound like she'd almost decided not to call. When I pulled up to her house again, the same sense of stillness greeted me. Except this time, it felt different. Familiar, maybe. She met me at the door in a loose gray sweater, hair pulled back carelessly, no makeup this time. She looked softer, more real. "Sorry," she said. "It started again last night." "It happens," I said. "Sometimes pressure builds where it shouldn't." She smiled faintly at that, and I wondered if she heard what I didn't mean to say. Inside, everything was exactly as before, except the book she'd been reading last time sat open on the counter, as if she'd left it mid-thought. The window was cracked open, and cool air drifted through. "I thought you fixed it," she said as I knelt again near the radiator. I did, I said, adjusting the wrench. But sometimes things loosen up on their own. Don't we all? She murmured. Her tone was light, but something in it carried weight, like the kind of humor people use to keep truth at a distance. She stood a few feet away, arms folded, watching without really watching. Her eyes seemed tired, but not from lack of sleep. It was a deeper kind of tired, the kind that comes from holding everything together for too long. I asked if she'd had a busy week. Just long, she said, glancing out the window. Work, calls, pretending everything's fine. The last part slipped out like it wasn't meant to. She caught herself, cleared her throat, and added, Anyway, you don't want to hear about that. Doesn't bother me, I said, still focused on the pipe. I'm sure it doesn't, she replied, almost to herself. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was metal against metal and the faint ticking of the radiator as it warmed. Then, without warning, a single drop of water hit my wrist. She stepped forward quickly with a towel. Here, she said, kneeling beside me. Our hands brushed. Just a second, but enough for both of us to notice. Her fingers were cool against my skin, trembling slightly, not from fear, just from the nearness. Sorry, she said, pulling back. It's okay. She exhaled, slow and uneven. You're good at what you do, she said quietly. Most people rush. You take your time. I looked up. She wasn't talking about plumbing anymore. I could feel it. The air had that charged stillness again, the kind that makes even breathing sound too loud. When I finished, she walked me to the door like before. The sunlight caught the edge of her sweater, turning the gray almost silver. Thank you, she said. Then, after a small pause, for not making things feel complicated. I didn't answer, because in that moment, everything already was. Before I left, she gave a small, unsure smile, one that almost cracked into something more before she stopped it. And later, when I got home, I realized I couldn't remember exactly what she'd said at the door, only how her voice had sounded, soft, careful, almost like a secret she hadn't meant to share. That a storm had rolled in late that evening. Heavy rain, wind pushing against the windows. She called, said water was leaking through a joint in the ceiling this time. Her voice sounded tired, almost embarrassed, like she hated needing help again. Don't worry, I told her. I'm close by. By the time I got there, the world outside had turned gray-blue and restless. She met me at the door barefoot, sweater sleeves pulled over her hands. The lights flickered once as thunder shook the house. Sorry, she said, leading me in. I tried to catch it with a bowl, but it just kept dripping. Her living room looked different at night, softer, quieter. A single lamp lit the corner, and the rest was shadows and rain. I set up my tools near the spot where the water was seeping, and she hovered nearby, restless in her stillness. You don't have to stay, I said. I know, she replied. But she didn't leave. The rain softened for a moment, and in that pause, the house felt too quiet. I could hear her shifting behind me, the faint sound of her hand brushing her hair, the small exhale when she sat down on the arm of a chair. You ever feel like things keep breaking just to get your attention? She asked suddenly. I looked up. What do you mean? She shrugged. Pipes, lights, people. A wry smile. All of it. Like the universe keeps finding small ways to remind you what you've ignored. I didn't know how to answer. There was something in her voice, that mix of weariness and humor, that made me want to ask what exactly she'd been ignoring. But I didn't. Some questions felt too close to touching something raw. When I finished tightening the valve, she poured 2 cups of tea without asking if I wanted one. You might as well wait until the rain slows, she said. No point in drowning on your way out. We sat near the window, steam rising between us, the sound of the rain steady and alive. She looked different in that light, softer lines, tired eyes, but still that quiet composure that made everything around her feel deliberate. Her phone buzzed once on the table. She glanced at it and frowned. The name on the screen, I only caught the first letter, froze her for half a second. Go ahead, I said. She shook her head. No, it's nothing. But her hand stayed near the phone, fingers tracing the edge of it like she was afraid of what waited inside. After a while, she said quietly, You don't talk much. I try to listen, I said. That's dangerous, she whispered. People say too much when they think someone's really listening. The rain grew heavier, filling the silence between us. At one point, she reached across to hand me the sugar, and her fingers brushed mine. A small, accidental thing. But neither of us moved right away. Thunder rolled again, closer this time. Thank you, she said, her voice steady but softer now. For coming when you didn't have to. I wanted to say something, anything that could name the weight of what sat between us, but I didn't. Instead, I stood, setting the cup down, pretending to check the window frame. Her reflection met mine in the glass, two shapes caught in a small, flickering light. For a second, we both leaned forward. Not enough to cross the line, but enough to know exactly where it was. She called again, not for work this time, just to check if the fix held. I knew what that meant, and so did she. Still, I went. When I arrived, her house looked untouched by time. Same lamp, same faint smell of cedar and orange. Except now, there was music, something soft and old, a vinyl spinning low in the background. She was sitting at the kitchen table, a half-empty glass of wine in front of her, eyes following the rim of it like she was tracing a thought she couldn't finish. You want one? She asked. Sure, I said, though I rarely drank on jobs. She poured quietly. No small talk this time. Just the sound of the record crackling and the faint hum of the fridge. You ever wonder, she said finally, why certain people show up when they do? I looked at her, really looked. Sometimes. She gave a small, humorless smile. I wasn't asking for help. Not really. The pipes, I mean. I could have called anyone. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She looked down, turning the glass slowly in her hand. You remind me of something I used to believe in. That's not fair, is it? Her words landed somewhere deep, heavy. I wanted to tell her I wasn't anyone's reminder. But the truth was, I didn't mind being one if it meant I could stay here a little longer. You're not being unfair, I said quietly. Just honest. Her eyes met mine then, sharp and unguarded. Honest gets people hurt. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The record ended, and the silence that followed felt alive, like it had a pulse of its own. I could feel the distance between us shrinking, not in steps, but in breaths. I keep thinking this should stop, she said. Whatever this is. I nodded slowly. Then why doesn't it? She gave a soft laugh that wasn't really laughter. Because it feels real. And I don't remember the last time something did. Her voice cracked on that last word. Just slightly, but enough to make me want to reach across the table. I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I said the only thing that came to mind. You don't have to keep pretending you're fine. That stopped her. She looked at me like I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to. Then she set the glass down, carefully, like it might shatter. You think I'm lonely, she said. You're wrong. I don't think that, I said. Then what do you think? I hesitated, searching for something that wouldn't ruin the air between us. I think you're tired of being strong. Her jaw tightened, just slightly, and then she looked away, blinking too fast. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful anymore. It was fragile, trembling on the edge of something that couldn't be taken back. She whispered, almost to herself, we shouldn't be sitting here like this. I know, but neither of us moved. When she finally looked at me again, her voice was calm, but her eyes said everything else. I just don't know what to do with someone who actually sees me. She called on a Sunday, late afternoon, when the light starts to lose its warmth but the day still pretends it has more to give. Her voice was softer this time. Not tired, just stripped down. The heat isn't working again, she said. If you're not busy. I wasn't. Or maybe I just didn't want to be anywhere else. When I arrived, she was sitting on the floor near the radiator, wrapped in a blanket, a cup of tea cooling beside her. She smiled faintly when she saw me. I tried fixing it myself, she said, gesturing to the open toolbox beside her. I knelt beside her. That's brave. Or foolish, she said, half smiling. I never learned how to fix things. My husband used to handle all that. It was the first time she'd mentioned him. The word husband hung in the air, dry and quiet. I didn't ask. I didn't have to. She filled the silence herself. He passed away 3 years ago, she said. Heart attack. Quick, they said. Like that made it easier. The words were clean, almost rehearsed. but her hands betrayed her, fingers tightening slightly on the blanket. "I'm sorry," I said. It sounded small, useless. She nodded once. "Everyone says that. But it's okay. I'm used to the space he left. It just moves around sometimes." I sat beside her, the floor cool under my palms. The radiator made a faint ticking sound, like it was trying to start a heartbeat. She looked at me then, not searching, not guarded, just steady. "You remind me of him sometimes," she said quietly. "Not because you look like him. You don't. It's something else. The way you listen, maybe." It felt like the floor shifted, just slightly. "Is that a good thing?" I asked. She smiled, sad but real. "I don't know yet." We stayed like that for a while. Two people pretending to focus on the radiator when really we were just learning the silence between us. I reached forward to adjust a valve, and she watched, eyes following my hands with that same unspoken attention she'd given me since the first day. "Do you ever miss someone so long that missing them becomes a habit?" she said after a while. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Maybe that's how love stays alive, by pretending it still has somewhere to go." She looked at me for a long moment, the kind that feels like it stretches time. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because I might start believing them." The radiator finally groaned to life, a rush of heat filling the quiet. She laughed softly at the timing, but her eyes glistened in the dim light. When I stood to leave, she didn't move, just sat there, knees pulled close, blanket slipping from her shoulder. I hesitated at the door, turning back. "It's warm now." She nodded. "It is." But her voice said something different, something that had nothing to do with the room. And as I walked out into the fading light, I realized I'd fixed the wrong thing. The days had blurred into late autumn, and the cold had settled in for good. She called again, not because something was broken, but because she had an extra cup of coffee and didn't like drinking alone. I almost said no. Almost. But the hesitation was just long enough for her to add, "It's just coffee." And that made it worse. When I arrived, the house felt softer somehow, less curated, more lived in. A blanket draped carelessly over the couch, a half-read newspaper on the table. She looked different too, not put together this time. Just her. We sat across from each other, the sound of the kettle still echoing faintly in the background. She stirred her coffee slowly, like she was buying time. "You know this can't keep going," she said finally. I nodded, though I didn't know what this meant anymore. "I know." She gave a small, tired laugh. "You say that like you mean it." "I do," I said. "I just don't know what to do with it." Her gaze softened. "You're young. You're supposed to have answers. I'm the one who's supposed to be lost." "I don't think it works like that," I said quietly. The silence stretched, thick but not uncomfortable. There was something fragile in the air, not tension, just truth finding its way out. "I keep thinking," she said, eyes drifting toward the window, "that if I were someone else, someone your age, someone lighter, maybe this would make sense." "It already does," I said, before I could stop myself. She closed her eyes, shaking her head. "Don't make it sound simple." "I'm not," I whispered. Her hand was resting on the table, fingers curled loosely around the mug. I watched them tremble slightly, a tiny, involuntary movement she didn't seem to notice. Without thinking, I reached across and covered them with mine. She didn't pull away. Not this time. For a long while, neither of us spoke. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the heater and the soft clink of ceramic as our mugs cooled. "Finally," she said, "you make me feel seen again." I didn't realize how long it had been. I swallowed hard. "You make me stop trying so hard to be someone else." She smiled, small, tired, honest. The kind that says too much without a word. We sat there like that, hands resting between us, no pretending left. No right or wrong, no beginning or end. Just the quiet space where everything finally made sense. When she finally stood, she didn't let go right away. Just held my hand for one extra breath, as if memorizing it. Then she said, barely audible, "Whatever this is, let's not ruin it by naming it." I nodded. The rain had started again outside, soft this time, almost comforting. She walked me to the door, and before I left, she leaned her forehead against mine. Not a kiss, not even close. Just stillness. A moment that didn't ask for more. and somehow that was enough. And yet, every morning when I start the truck, I still half expect my phone to buzz with her name. Another excuse, another small problem that needed fixing. But it doesn't, and that's okay. What happened between us was never meant to stretch across years or promises. It existed in the quiet corners of time, those small, unspoken moments that don't belong to anyone but the two people who live them. I think about her sometimes when I'm working, when I smell cedar, or hear an old record hum through static. I still remember the sound of her laugh, the way it carried a sadness that never asked for pity. She never wanted saving. She just wanted to be seen. And I guess that's what changed in me. I stopped confusing love with rescue. What we had wasn't a romance in the way stories usually tell it. There was no declaration, no dramatic goodbye, just a gradual understanding that sometimes the most honest kind of love is the kind that knows when to let itself end. She taught me that connection doesn't always need a name to be real. It just needs truth. When I think back, the moment that stays with me isn't the touch of her hand or the quiet of that last night. It's the pause before she said, "Let's not ruin it by naming it." Because that was her gift, knowing when silence said more than words ever could. Now, whenever I meet someone, a client, a stranger, anyone, I try to listen the way I listened to her. Not to respond, but to understand. That's the thing about her presence. It didn't fade. It softened everything that came after. Sometimes love doesn't stay. It just leaves the door open inside you. And when I drive past her street now, I don't stop. I just glance at the window that used to glow in the evenings and feel something like peace. Not loss, not longing, just quiet gratitude for what it was and what it taught me to be brave enough to feel. Because maybe not every story is about getting someone. Maybe some are just about being changed by them. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?